Hey, welcome to my channel where I talk about my dolls, and that's literally it. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing an experience I've recently / I'm currently going through. A bunch of my dolls were stolen, and there are a couple reasons I wanted to share this experience. The main one, I think, is because I feel like getting it off my chest will help me move on and get back to my regular doll routine. And another reason that I hope isn't necessary is this could be informational to people because there were things I learned in this experience, going through this experience, that I didn't know existed or didn't know would be an issue. And so maybe someone out there, whether it's just to have in their head and never need the information, you'll maybe get something out of this video, little nuggets of information. And a smaller reason, maybe like people out there could share their experiences with me, give me some information that maybe I didn't have that was correct, or maybe I did something wrong, etc. And two things I need to make clear before I tell the story is, one, it wasn't any of my American Girl dolls or my Tiana dolls, no dolls that I've ever shared on my channel. And two, I have property insurance. So things could have been a lot worse. It was a very terrible experience, but as I went through it, I just kept telling myself it could be worse, it could be worse. So I may say that a lot in this video. And um, to anyone who doesn't want to stick around, they were just kind of curious about those parts, the one takeaway I would say is, if you have the means, do consider property insurance. But, and this will come up later, much later in the story, make sure you are aware of how much of that coverage is for your collectibles, and make sure that the deductible works for you. Again, things that I learned through this process, and I will cover it later on in the story. So to anyone who's going to stick around and listen to this whole story, I know it's going to be long and probably overly detailed at times, and some of those details will not be fun. Things get, I try not to get too far ahead of myself, but I'll say that there were a couple instances in this story where I had to become less than the happy-go-lucky person that you usually see in my videos, meaning I have to get nasty a couple times because of what I go through, what I went through. And so that's just one thing I really want to make clear, that even though I don't have any coarse language or anything like that in this video, or I don't really swear in my real life either, I just wanted to give a little heads up that you'll see a different side of me. And also, this is going to be it's going to be hard to tell the story because it's really fresh. And even as I'm talking right now, I can feel that I'm like nervous talking about it. So it's not going to be one seamless, one take video. I know it's going to take me a lot of time to get all these details out. So if you're going to stick around, I think that's all I need to give you as a sort of heads up. So on the evening of September 17th, 2024, as in about a month ago at the time I'm recording this, I sat down to start filming a video. And part of my process is usually like cleaning up, rounding up the dolls I'm going to be talking about, and maybe vacuuming, dusting, anything that I think will protect the dolls that I'm taking out of like their displays. And on this particular night for this particular video, I had a box sitting in my kitchen, which is, I'm nodding toward it. It had been sitting there for almost a month. I did an unboxing video on August 24th. I'm just trying to give you all the dates so that you can kind of visualize the timeline. And it's really unlike me to have a box that I need to bring down to my storage locker. I usually want to get things out of the way. That's why I have the storage locker and pay extra for it and everything. But for whatever reason, and this is gonna come up later in the story, for whatever reason, I just had that sitting in my kitchen for nearly a month. And then the night that I was filming this video, September 17th, I was like, okay, this is the night. I need to bring this down to my storage locker. And just to give a little description of my storage locker, it's in the basement of my building. And when you come out of the elevator, the entrance to get inside the storage lockers is right there. There's a camera above it. And there's not a lock. It's the doorknob itself has to be, you put a key in it in order to get in. So you don't need to lock the door behind you. It always locks. It automatically locks. And my locker is the third storage locker into this room that my locker's in. Just trying to give you some visuals here because, usually I have stuff that I'm showing off, and now I'm just talking. So it's like the first locker has been empty, like pretty much the whole time I've been there. The second locker, somebody's been using that. And then I'm the next locker after that. So I'm the third locker in. And pretty much the entire time I've lived here, so about 4 years, I've had Chucky dolls, life-size Chucky dolls, and they come in they come in like a display box that's almost 3 feet tall, and then that comes inside a shipper box that's a little bit bigger than almost 3 feet tall. So that means pretty much the entire time I've lived here, my storage locker, when I open it, it's just a wall of Chucky boxes and shipper boxes. So they don't look like anything. There's nothing really tempting about them, if you know what I'm saying. And sometimes it's to the point, like if my air conditioner is in there, my locker is so stuffed that sometimes the hasp, which is what the lock goes over and then it opens like that, it's called a hasp. I learned that through this experience. Um, Sometimes it's so stuffed with my boxes and everything else. It's not just my Chucky stuff that's in there. It's Christmas decorations, whatever. Like I said, the air conditioner. Uh, so oftentimes when I go in to open the door, the hasp is like pushed against because it's so stuffed in there. And then the night of September 17th, when I went down, I was amazed that because my AC was up because it was uh, still warm weather here, so I still had my AC out, and I was amazed that the hasp was so pushed that it looked bent, like bent almost at a 90-degree angle. And so it wasn't hanging off or anything like that. It just looked bent. And I was like, wow, I really need to get in there and organize this storage locker. It's so stuffed even with my AC out. And then I went to grab the padlock or the combination lock to undo it and, see how stuffed my locker was right now. And the hasp came off. It was held on by the lock, but the hasp that was screwed into the wooden door, for the record, it was like somebody had ripped it off and then pushed it back, put the screws back in the hole, but not screwed it back in because they couldn't do that. But in that moment, there was just this sweeping denial, like somebody broke or somebody ripped off my hat or my lock. Did they think that I moved out and they were just checking to see if it was empty? Because that can happen, right? It's a building locker. Like that's how strong my denial was in that moment. I'll never forget how I was like, everything's gonna be fine. My Chucky dolls are still gonna be in here. And as I mentioned couple minutes ago, anytime I open that door, I'm just greeted with a wall of Chucky doll boxes. So just brown shipper boxes, floor to ceiling, wall to wall in this maybe, let's say 4 feet by 7 feet, 8 feet tall locker. But on this night, when I pulled open the locker, I was just greeted by emptiness. And it hit me so hard that I didn't even really take in what I was seeing. I stumbled back, having only seen emptiness in this locker that for the last 4 years has been rammed full of Chucky boxes. So I think I just kind of slammed the door closed, the locker door, because it really shocked me to the point where I'm like, no, this isn't real. This isn't real. So I kind of pace in the locker room, and it's a long storage locker. So I think let me insert a couple pictures. First of all, let me show you the hasp that I said as it was hanging off when I went to touch it. And then I'll show you how the locker is, how it's just this long, narrow corridor. So first things first, I kept a souvenir. This is the hasp. I don't know if you can see how demolished it was. Like this is it in person, even though the picture is very clear of what they did. Somebody used a crowbar. And so I'm kind of pacing, as I said, in that long, narrow hallway, thinking like, what do I do? What's the first thing I should do? And I thought of the cameras outside the door. So I thought, okay, first thing I do, this is about 9 o'clock at night. I go back up to my apartment and I think to call our building management. It's like they own a lot of buildings. I'm in Canada. They're situated in America. Their head office area is in America. So I know that when I call, it's just going to be a call center and it's after hours. So nobody's going to help, like nobody's going to be able to rush and help me, but I can at least tell them what's happened. And for the record, my brain is not functioning properly. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do in a situation like this. And I almost feel like it's a dream at this part. So that probably wasn't the proper first move, but that was where my brain went. So as I'm talking to the person, I'm calm. It's not their fault, and I don't feel like that at all. I'm too busy thinking they need to get the camera footage so they can find out who took my Chucky dolls, go up to them, and get their Chucky dolls back for me. And that's all I could think was they need to get my stuff back. And so I was calmly, a little probably not normally calmly with what was going on, talking to him. And then at the end of the conversation, he said, someone's going to get back to me from the building tomorrow because it was after hours. It was late at night. And it wasn't an emergency in the case where I needed somebody to come up. I didn't need to wake up the superintendent or maintenance person to come and see me about my dolls. But I was just in my own panic, and it was my own personal feelings that wanted this to be dealt with. So as I'm hanging up the phone with him, I kind of think out loud. I'm like, oh, I need to call insurance. Luckily, I have insurance, right? Because that's something I kind of thought as I was walking up, like, at least I have insurance. And so I call the insurance number after looking up all my information, all that kind of stuff. And I've never had to make an insurance claim in my life with my car, with anything. So even then I wasn't sure of the process because yeah, it's like almost 9:30 at night now by the time I'm getting on with insurance. And as I'm on hold, they mentioned calling the police, and I was like, was I supposed to do that first? Was I supposed to call the police first and report a crime? And I eventually got on with another, like a telephone agent, because it's after hours, and he takes in all the information. I give the contents, and in my head, because I saw an empty storage locker where I had 7 life-size Chucky dolls, and these things are not cheap. And I wasn't doing proper math in my head because I was so panicked. Um, I had come to this number in my head of $4,500, and so that's the information he took down. And at the end of the conversation, he said to, I said, "Oh, I need to call the police now, right?" He said, "Yeah, go get pictures, go take pictures of everything." And I was like, "Yeah, pictures. Why didn't I had my phone on me. Why didn't I take pictures when I was down there?" So that's what he said to do: go down, take pictures, and that way it's ready for the police when you make your report. And all this is feeling like so official and so like, if I make a report and they get me my dolls back, like if I make a report, are they not going to get my dolls back? I just want my dolls back. And so I go down, and because I'm there and I'm taking a picture of the hasp that I showed a moment ago, I just suddenly feel like, was it just me? Did I do something wrong? Did I leave something sticking out? Not blaming myself, but just trying to think like what made them target my locker? I don't think I know it didn't have anything to do with this channel because I don't talk about my storage locker or Chucky dolls. And even though I do now, it doesn't matter because I no longer have stuff down there. Spoiler. So I'm just trying to figure out like what I did wrong. And then I was like, wait a minute, maybe I'm not the only person they targeted, because as I said, their first locker's empty, and then the rest, they all have locks on it. So I start with the locker next to mine, and the same thing happens. I grab their lock, and the hasp comes right off, and then is hanging on by the lock that's still attached. But it's not my locker, so even though it looks very empty to me, I don't know what's supposed to be in there. And I'm just thinking, wow, they start here because the locker, like I said, looked pretty empty, and then they didn't get enough, so then they moved on to my locker. But then I'm noticing in my locker now, it's like I'm thinking a little bit more clearly, and I have like proper vision now, and I could see that my locker, there were still 3 Chucky doll boxes in there. It's just that they're on like the floor, and they're the ones that were stacked were no longer there. So it's like that's all I saw when I opened it. I didn't even see all like my shelves were ransacked, and all my ornaments were there, like my Christmas ornaments, as I mentioned. So as I started touching the boxes, all I could hear is like shattered glass. So let me insert a picture of how the shelf looked that was completely ransacked, and what I didn't notice because I was, out of my mind. So now I'm feeling a little bit more rational. I'm being more aware of my surroundings, and I decide to continue with all the locks. And this is going to become important later. So I check the locker next to mine. So going toward the back of that long hallway, there was a lock. The hasp wasn't ripped off. And I go all the way to the end, and I check every lock. As far as I remember, I checked every lock. I don't know why I would have stopped, and this is going to matter later. But as far as I remember, I checked every single lock, pulling on all of them. None of them were broken. So then, with the pictures I now have, I go upstairs and I call the police. Like, meaning I call my local, what do you call it? A district, police district? That's not the right word. It'll come to me. Instead of, it's not an emergency. I'm not going to call 911. So I call it my division, my local division. And I'm passed around a bit, and then I finally get put through to an operator. I open the police report with her, and I have to do a little aside here to explain something that maybe it's in my head, but I don't. This is how it sounded to me. A long time ago, I used to cover for a receptionist at work, and they sent me to this course on how to answer the phone nicely. And one of the things they said was, make sure you always smile, because people can hear your expression even though you don't know it. And I'm saying that because when I was explaining to the operator what was stolen, she was like, dolls? I could hear the revulsion in her expression. And I'm trying to explain, like, they're movie props, Chucky dolls. They're very, very big. She's like puppets? And I was like, no, well, they're replicas of puppets, so they're just dolls. And she was like, okay. And every time I was trying to give it a little more detail, she was just like, okay. And I could just hear what she sounded like. And I was like, oh yeah, that course was right for telling me to smile when I'm on the phone at all times. So as she brings the call to a close, she says, they'll be by as soon as they can. And I'm like, as soon as they can? That sounds really vague. And she's just saying, yeah, they're emergencies. They'll get around to when they can. I'm like, could it be as late as 3 a.m.? Because it's probably about, what, 10 o'clock at this point, maybe a little bit later. And she's just like, yeah, it could be 3 a.m., could be whenever. And so then I say to her, okay, I'm going to go down and bring up the stuff that was left over, the three dolls. And she said, oh, no, don't touch anything. It's a crime scene. And so now I've like got five thoughts in my head. One of them, okay, can't bring up my dolls. That's bad. Two, don't touch anything. I went downstairs and I touched everything. I grabbed every hasp, every lock. If this really is a crime scene, me thinking they're going to care about this and they investigate my fingerprints on everything. But I mean, don't worry, that doesn't come into play, but I'm just letting you know that was on my mind. And then another stupid thing that was on my mind was, how am I going to record my video? Because, my brain's foggy. I'm just all over the place. And on the bright side of that, I had to do something while I was waiting for the police to come. So I do end up recording the video. And for anybody who watches my videos and is curious for the timeline, it was my 10 favorite American Girl dolls video. And I have no recollection of filming it, which is unfortunate because, usually that's the only memory I have in order to like respond to comments. But because I was so out of my mind, it's gone. And so it's also one of the rare times that I had to watch back a video. Just, I don't know, I guess I wanted to make sure that I was being appropriate. I don't know, because I had no memory of it. And I don't know if I always behave that way in my videos or if I really was as manic as I seemed. But I was just like, I laugh a lot and for no reason. Like, what am I saying that's funny? So I don't know if I was just really emotional and kind of delirious or delirious, like tired and stressed and everything in the moment. So I was just like, well, I'm too out of it to re-record this. But it was sad that all the things I had planned for the video, I didn't do. Like, I messed up that video a lot. If anyone ever goes back and watches it, just know that was not what the video was supposed to be like. And I was like out of my mind that whole time. So after I finished, because now I've recorded the video, I've watched the video back, I've uploaded it, whatever. I'm just letting you know, like, kind of the time went by for that night. And so by the time that's done, everything, it's about 3 a.m. and the police haven't shown up yet. So it's a Tuesday night. I can't remember if I said that. I might have already said it a couple times, but it's Tuesday night, which means I need to go to work the next day. I need to go to the office. So all I think is by 5 a.m. So by 5 a.m. after all this, should I, like, if I get ready for bed and they come and I'm like in my pajamas, or, I don't sleep in pajamas, but if I'm in my sleepwear, I'll just, I decided at 5 a.m., let me just put some clothes by my bed. And when they come, I will just throw on the clothes and take them down and show them everything and hope they don't dust for fingerprints. But then I fall asleep and at 7:38, my phone rings and I know it was 7:38 because, I have that call in my phone list still, and it was the operator, and she was apologizing, saying that the police weren't going to make it today, which was now tomorrow, because I placed the call the night before, and that I should call back to reopen the call, and they'll come if there are no other emergencies. So I said, I have to reopen the call. They just won't come whenever they're available. And she said, no, if they don't make it tomorrow, call the next day and keep doing it because this is low priority, which, as I said, I'm the crazy doll collector at this point to her as far as she's concerned. Someone who collects these like scary horror movie prop puppets. So it was just a low priority, that was like step one of like, oh, so when you're robbed, when there's a crime on your property, police don't care. And I'm not putting them down. I'm not making any personal judgments. I'm just saying, oh, that was the first lesson I had to learn in this process was, the police don't care. Oh no. And I was told I had to call and make a report. Like, that's what insurance told me. So anyway, it's, like I said, it's the next morning, it's Wednesday. So I consider that now day one's events. So all the next day at work, I'm not just tired, I'm completely stressed out because, like I said, the operator from the division told me not to touch anything. It was a crime scene. So all my stuff's sitting down there. And all I can think of how exposed it is because I have no lock on my door. And I don't even know when this happened because this is what I was saying. I had that box that I had meant to bring down there for almost a month, which means I hadn't been down there in at least a month. Getting my AC was last time, probably 2 months. So for me, it was just I had no timeline of no guess of when this could have happened. If if they were in the middle of doing it, and that's why there were only 3 boxes left. And so I'm just all day sitting there thinking, what if they weren't done? And now they've got this whole day to go down there and take these out. And I could have taken them up last night. And here I am waiting for the building to call me. And I'm trying to get trying to do my work because I'm at the office. And I'm so tired. And just, I've never been through anything like this before. So I don't know if what I did was correct. I don't know if, you know, insurance is waiting for me to fill out a form. But it's like, I don't even know. Because remember I mentioned earlier that I thought all these dolls were worth $4,500, 5,000 around there. Totally wrong. It would have been at least twice that if it was all the dolls, but luckily those 3 were left over, so then it was about correct, the $4,500. So, but I haven't even submitted that because, for one thing, I haven't gone through everything. It wasn't just the big Chucky doll boxes that were taken, by the way. There were all these little boxes, other Chucky stuff that weren't just life-size dolls, and it's like it was too much. Like I wasn't allowed to touch anything, but even when I get home that day, later that day, it's still stressful. I'll get there in a minute. But so it's all day I'm stressing out, wondering why the building hasn't called me because they said they were going to call me back the next day. And so I'm at a 9 to 5 job. So I get home a little after 5, maybe 5:30ish. And, wondering, police haven't gotten back to me. The building hasn't gotten back to me. Is my stuff still going to be down in the basement? So that's like the first thing I do when I get home is I run back down to the storage locker. And, my thought all night has been it must be a very narrow suspect list because there are only about maybe 8 lockers in that particular room. So the only people who could get in would be somebody who has a key to get into that particular locker room and then take a crowbar to my lock, whatever. So I go in and I'm just looking around because, yeah, like I said, I now know it's me and my locker neighbor who've been broken into. And so I don't want to, our building has a Facebook group, by the way, and I didn't want to post anything to the group and say oh, if your locker's in this locker room, go check it out because there's a lock that's been broken. I just didn't want to draw attention to it in case, not just my stuff, but that person's stuff, anybody's stuff, that it's vulnerable. And so another thing I was checking at work all day, by the way, was Facebook Marketplace to see if my Chucky stuff had shown up, if anybody locally had been selling it, and then I could narrow down who, if I saw it, I could contact who stole my doll. But there was nothing on Facebook Marketplace for the record. So anyway, back to what I was saying. I get home and when I walk into the locker room, I can tell that nothing's been touched. So nobody from the building has been by. And I'm going through my locker now. I'm kind of poking through things, but it's really, I don't know how to explain it. It sounds cheesy, but it was really emotional. It was the more I lifted everything and heard all those broken ornaments, Christmas ornaments that I've been collecting for, I don't know, 15 years, however long. I can live without them. It's not the end of the world, but it was just one of those sad moments where it's oh, all these ornaments that I've been accumulating, they're all gone. They're all broken. They're smashed. Whoever had come in here, as you saw in the picture, had a party by the looks of it, or, they were in a rush. And so I'm just looking around and I look up and I see a box. I see my Christmas wreath on top of the locker and one of the Chucky boxes. It's about this big. Now I should explain some of the dolls that were taken. One of the ones that wasn't taken was something called the Ultimate Chucky. And he's life-size, and his head and hands are removable. And when they released him, it was so that they could release future sets, would be a head and a pair of hands, so you can change his look because Chucky has multiple looks throughout the run of the movies. And the box that was up on top was the head. It was what they called the Tommy head and hands. So it looked like the Tommy doll. If you're not a Chucky fan, don't worry, just know Tommy head. And I was really sad that was taken because I hadn't even opened it yet. I'd only opened it, looked at it, and then put it away. And side note, that was something I was going to unbox on my channel for Halloween, but this story time is in place of that, obviously. And so I looked up and I saw the box and I thought, oh, no way, the doll gods have saved my Tommy head. And I already had the Ultimate Chucky to save with it too. So I was just starting to feel okay, some things were saved and could be worse. As I said, could be worse. This is getting better. So I just grab some kind of stick from my locker stuff and I pop the box along, comes down, and it's been gutted. It's empty. It's just a shipping box. And so I was so mad that I let myself get excited. But it was I just wanted to believe that I had that Tommy head. So I let myself believe it for those 2 minutes until I got it down. So I don't know why they left behind the shipping box for that. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm just annoyed when I think about it. Because they also stole, by the way, I realized they stole some empty boxes. Like I had, just need to get this off my chest. A lot of my Tiana merchandise comes in really big boxes that I have nowhere to keep it in my apartment. So I would put those empty boxes down there. They're filled with like styrofoam and it's a shipping box. And so like if I ever move, it's to protect these pieces that are so fragile and delicate. But they stole my empty boxes. So like I don't even it's so annoying. Okay, now I'm getting really into the story. Let me calm down. But I think what happened was they opened the shipper box, they saw the big Disney logo and thought, "Ooh, I can sell this." Whoever it was. So anyway, I am now annoyed, super annoyed that I got excited with my Tommy head and it wasn't there, and all these like broken ornaments I'm picking up, and I'm just, it's honestly, it's too much. I don't want to know what else has been taken at this point. I just know it's a lot. So I leave and I call the building, the property management, so the call center in the States again, and I say, "Hi, I called last night about this, and nobody called me today." And then this person said, "Oh yeah, somebody will get back to you within 48 hours." And then I snapped. I said, 48 hours. Let me put my hand over the microphone because I get really loud. So what I'm about to say, I'm not nice on the phone at this point. I'm like, this is not some 48-hour turnaround. You can get back to me next time whenever you feel like it. My property was stolen. There is a locker next to mine that's also been broken into. Somebody should have gone back to me like as soon as the office opened today. Why is this being treated like somebody, found a piece of trash in the staircase? Like this, $5,000 of my merchandise of my personal property was stolen from your locker that I pay every month rent on because it's not included with the apartment. So it was just like, what it is? I think what triggered me so much was just like, "Oh yeah, we'll get back to you in 48 hours. So I just went, what? So the police don't care. Like the building doesn't care. It's like, I know I'm probably the only one who cares because it's my stuff and I understand, but that was not the correct response. The correct response was, "I'm so sorry. Why did nobody get back to you? This is important." So anyway, within 3 minutes of hanging up that phone, there's a knock on my door, and I'm going to give anybody who has like a part in the story, I'm just going to give them fake names. It's just for the sake of telling the story because I don't want to sound like I'm. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Fake names. So the person who comes up, I believe he's like a superintendent, something like that. I mind my business in this building, so I don't really know anyone, to be honest. So this guy knocks on my building, and I'm on my door, and I'm gonna call him Bill. And he looks really spooked. He's just like, "Blaine, what happened?" And I'm like, he's like, "The building just called me, and you got your locker broken into." And I'm like, "Yes, it happened last night." And he's like, "Oh, let's go down right now. I didn't know about this. I'm so sorry." And he's being really nice. So of course, I'm being very nice and appreciative. And he's being genuine. It's not like he's not trying to calm me down or anything. He's really like, he's spooked out, and I'll find out in a minute why he was spooked. But as we're looking at my locker, he's like, "My legs are shaking. I've worked here for 8 years. I've never seen anything like this. Nobody's ever broken into the lockers as long as I've worked here." And I was like, "Yes, I've lived here for 4 years. I've had these boxes in here the whole time. They weren't always empty. They weren't always, most of the time they were empty. So it's just something that I've come to think was safe." So in the middle of me kind of giving my sob story of, yeah, I have so much stuff, so much property, these things meant a lot to me, he's like, "Yeah, I'm really worried because my locker's next to yours." And I'm like, "Okay, your locker's fine. I checked. Don't worry." So he's like, "Let me look." I'm like, "Listen, I checked all the lockers last night. Only mine and this one were broken into. So somebody needs to contact this person." And then I'm trying to I'm telling him the story, like everything that I've already told you, the things that was up on top, how I called the police, etc., etc., and just kind of talk about like what's next. And so I, as I said, assumed it was somebody who would have had a key to get into the locker, because one of the things he said to me was maybe somebody left it unlocked. But as I already mentioned in the beginning of the story, you probably wouldn't remember because it's a long time ago, is that there's no lock. It's like the doorknob, you put a key in the doorknob, and that's the only way to turn the doorknob is with this key. So I was saying, no, it's not that you don't lock the door, it automatically locks itself. So I go back out to show him, and then I'm like, wait a minute, what if? And so what I did was I turned, so the knob, it's one of those doorknobs that's like long. So I turn it, and usually it's very, very stiff, like no movement whatsoever. But I noticed that it was a little bit loose, like it could go down a bit, which was weird. So I pushed it down, and then I pushed on the door, and the door opened. And so I looked at him and like, the door's been jimmied. Somebody broke this actual door. And so we did it 3 times. And that's going to be important later. Just pointing out that I showed him, we did this, like I showed him 3 times, like, look, the door's been broken. So he calls like his boss, and they're talking on speakerphone. So I'm hearing everything. So he's explaining that the door's been broken, and she's gonna talk to the maintenance guy. The maintenance guy will come to later, so let's call him Carl. So she's gonna talk to the maintenance guy, and then I'm talking about the camera that's right outside the door. We can find out who did this. And so he's asking how to look through the security footage. He's never had to do it before. And she tells him, "Don't worry, I'm going to walk you through it. You'll do it later, but you can't tell the tenant. Tell me, because if it's any of the other tenants, it's privacy. They can't tell me who did it. They'll tell the police if they find out who did it. They'll those are the channels they'll go through, not me." And she's on speaker, probably not knowing I can hear everything. And I'm just like, really? This is what you have to say right now? You're not even looking at the footage. Save it. And so um, we leave the storage locker at that point, and so I'm feeling a little bit better just because I feel like there's some progress. They're going to look at their security footage, and something I had to tell you about all this denial about these dolls coming back to me is I've always been that way. So here's a story just to show you how ridiculous I am when it comes to not letting go of my toys. When I was a kid, my parents used to force me to go to my brother's hockey games, and I hated hockey. And one time when I was really young, maybe 6 or 7, my mom stopped me off at a toy store. She picked me up this little like Muppet, a little Gonzo toy to bring with me, to shut me up. And while I was at the game, it was so boring, I fell asleep. So when they carried me home, they left my Gonzo behind. And I'm not kidding. Anytime I visited that arena until I was, I don't know, 10, 11 years old. So for 3 years, 4 years, I would search every nook and cranny of that arena looking for my Gonzo every time I went back. Like there's something wrong with me where like if something's mine and I lose it or it gets taken from me, I'm like, no, it's coming back. I'm going to find it. So that's kind of what I was going through at this point. And that was my hope that, somebody in this building, somehow they could see something through one of the locker, like through the wood, the 2x4s or whatever. They just saw something Chucky and they're Chucky fans. They have it up in their apartment. And that's why they stopped where they did, because they, they had all those ones. Because as I'll show you in a minute, one of the boxes was ripped open and they didn't take that one, but they had ripped it open to see what was inside. So, because, you know what, that's the next day. So let me take a break. So the next day, I'm at work, which is Thursday, September 19th. If just keep the times in your mind. And again, I'm trying to work. I've been very stressed, not really sleeping properly. Just as I'm lying in bed, I'm just thinking about like who violated me, who stole my stuff, and it's just there's this feeling that you get when you go through this that it's like not even about the stuff that's gone. It's the somebody feeling entitled to coming in and taking your stuff, and you just feel dirty. And so I'm at work and I'm just stressed out, and so the person, this is not the same, so this is not Bill's boss who was on the speakerphone the other day. This is somebody else from the main office in America who calls me, and she's asking me, I kind of walk her through what happened again, and I tell her about the broken door. And so this has already been mentioned, but she's now going to make sure that the um, that the call is put in with someone I'm going to call Carl, and I'm going to call this woman Carol. It's just keeping the name simple for my sake. Um, so I explained the things that I brought back and why I took them upstairs. And I explained to her that I've been opening a police call. I opened one the first night, the second day, and now this is the third day. So I opened another police call again. And so she says, when I get home, send her the pictures of anything I have, the doors being broken, the locker being ransacked. And she wants me to, because I said, if there is any camera footage, they're going to see people walking out with these 3 feet long boxes. They're very obvious. And so she's saying, okay, cool, send me a picture. And so that's what happens. When I get home, I'll show you now the picture that I sent. It's just to show you the scale of these boxes, which I think you can picture from me talking about it, but here you go. I put it in next to my fridge for scale purposes. But when I'm on my way home, I haven't sent her the pictures yet, but as I'm heading up from my garage, I get a phone call and I see it's like the name of the building management, and it's who I'm going to call Carl. He's on the phone and he tells me he went down to look at the door. He's a maintenance guy, by the way, so I just, to explain my brain goes. He says he went down to look at the door because Carol called him. He said, but the door wasn't broken. And I was like, Carl, the door was absolutely broken. He said, I'm not going to say you're lying. I'm just saying the door is not broken. Okay. And I said, Carl, Bill was with me. We broke into the door 3 times, and it was jimmied a little bit. The door never has, and I explained like the doorknob never has movement, but if you turned it that little bit that it would turn and pushed it hard enough, it would open. And he said, I'm not saying you're lying. And he's getting really, really loud. And I'm like, Carl, I'm not telling you that you're saying I'm lying. I'm telling you that the door was broken. If it's not broken now, somebody fixed it. If you're the person who fixes the stuff around the building, you fixed it. Because if it's not broken, you fixed it. And he's getting so combative. I'm like, okay, dial it down. He might have, maybe I got him in trouble, even though I don't see how anybody's job is to go around and like check every single door to make sure that they're not, jimmied and able to like push your way through. So I felt a little unreasonable that he would get in trouble over that, but I don't work for the company management, so I don't know how those things go. So I kind of left it alone at that and was just like, ugh, how annoying. Like, the door is broken. Let me go down and check. And it was correct. What he said was true in the sense that it was no longer broken, but absolutely it was broken the day before when I showed Bill. So, just to cap off the rest of Thursday, I I had put in another call with my local police division. And that time she said what she'll do is, so she said what I should do instead of waiting for like an afternoon or evening, because I'm trying to time it so that I'm going to be home because I'm in the office from 9 to 5. But she said what I should do is make the morning, open the call in the morning, and then tell them to give a warning call that they're on the way, so that I have, because I'm 20 minutes from my office, so that if they say they're going to be there in 20 minutes, I know I can get home in time to be there when I see them. So that's kind of where things were left off on the Thursday. Now, day 4, Friday, it ends up being the craziest day of all. So I'm definitely going to have to take pauses and get my bearings straight because it's a lot. But the day starts out with I'm showering to get ready for work, and my bathroom is by the front entrance to my apartment. So I hear a knock on my door, and I'm like, that can't be the police because I haven't opened the call yet for today, and I don't know who would be knocking on my door. And I have to get ready for work. I have to leave for work. And so I'm just like, ignore it. Who cares? This will matter later. So I'm done getting ready for work. I'm on my way down to my car, and I get a call from Carl, but I don't pick it up because I got to drive and I got to get to work. Sorry, and I should have said that when the when the operator told me that I should set up a call in the morning and they'll call back, they're going to call back from a private number. So I know it's not the police because the police would be calling from a private or a blocked number. So I mean, even if it didn't say the name of I almost said the name of my building management on it. Even if it didn't say that, I would have looked for a private caller before I would answer. So like I said, my drive to and from work is 20 minutes. And I haven't put in the call for today yet. This is the Friday, like I said, day 4. Mm-hmm. And I'm driving to my office and I'm almost there. I'm like 5 minutes away. So I'm 15 minutes into the 20-minute drive. And I'm getting a call from a private caller. And I'm like, well, that's good. I didn't make it all the way to work, so I'll definitely have enough time to get back. So I answer the call even though I'm driving. And it's an officer saying he's at my door. And I'm like, you're at my door? Like, you're in my building? Because they were supposed to call. Like, they're supposed to give me 20 minutes to get there. So, okay, let me turn around. I'll be there in about 15 minutes. I didn't know the traffic going toward my apartment in that time was so much faster, but I got there in about 10 minutes. And so I parked the car outside on the street, and I see the police car parked in front of my building, and I see Bill. So Bill is the guy from the first guy who came down with me, the nicer one. That's his identifier. So he's talking to the police officer, and I pull up and I say, you know who I am. And so the officer, let's call him Brian. Officer Brian asks Bill to join us. I don't know why, but maybe because he works there. So we get downstairs, and this is about maybe a little after 9, maybe quarter after 9 in the morning now, on Friday. So we get down, and I'm showing him everything. I'm explaining everything I've already explained here, and I've already explained it like 10 times at this point in the story in my life. And so he's asking for the value of everything, and he goes, whoa, when I tell him how much the Chucky dolls are. And he's like, did you think they were more or less? He's like, a lot less. I'm like, these are movie prop replicas. Can we treat this like it is? And I explained to him, like, I have all my orders. Like, I have anything I bought was online, so I have the order history. I can easily prove how much these things are worth. And for the record, I'm only going by the primary retail value. I'm not even going by the secondary market because these things are not even made anymore. The companies I was buying these from, they had temporary licenses, so you can't even buy these for retail. And I was only claiming, because usually when you do collectibles, you claim what they're actually worth, I think. But anyway, I was, you know what, it was too much. I was like, just whatever I can get back, let's just go with the retail on this. So he asked me to airdrop the photos to him, and gives me his email and says if I have any information to send him an email that way. And so we kind of leave it there. I get to work at about 10 o'clock. And while I'm at work, the Carol, the building management person, emails me and says that Carl, the maintenance guy, who said that the door wasn't broken when it was, has found some boxes that he thinks might belong to me. So she said to get in touch with him when I get back home. And I'm like, oh, great. That's what I need to see, more empty boxes like my Tommy head. So it was something that I just was, I didn't even want to deal with it. I told him that I was off. This is Carl I'm talking about. I told him I was off at 5, which meant I would be home by like 5:30. And so when my phone starts ringing at 5 to 5 and I see it's him, I'm like, does he really think when I get off at 5, I teleport home? There's like a portal from my office to my apartment. I was so annoyed. It was, he was already so rude to me on the phone that I was just not in the mood at this point. But anyway, and I wasn't in the mood to see more empty boxes and, just be like, yeah, those were mine. Thanks for rubbing it in my face. Like maybe somebody had thrown it over the locker and it landed in another locker room. I didn't know where these other boxes could be. So anyway, I need to regroup before this next part, because this is the part where it gets really, really, I don't like to use the word crazy negatively, but this really does get crazy. Even though I had made an agreement with Carol that I would call Carl Monday morning because it's Friday and I just didn't want to deal with this over the weekend or going into the weekend. When I got back home, close to 5:30, I decided, okay, let's just get this over with. Let me get these more empty boxes. So I called him on the number he's been calling me from, and I just, said, hey, Carol told me to call you. You have some empty boxes. And he just starts yelling at me. He's like, you know what? I've already left for the weekend, but if you want me to come back, I'll come back. I'm like, no, we can do this on Monday. He's like, no, I'm going to come back now. I'm only 10 minutes away. If you want to be there, be there. But if not, I don't care. It's for you. It's not for me. And so he hung up the phone. And because I was coming up from my car, from the garage at this point, by the time I get up to my apartment, I'm like, how is he acting like he's the one who's been robbed? I'm the victim here. Why is he acting like this? So I'm getting more and more angry. Like I'm getting angry and angrier as I'm waiting for him he says he lives 3 minutes away. He'll be here in 3 minutes. So I'm already getting into this defense mode, right? Because of the way he's now been in 2 conversations. And I don't know I don't know anybody in the building. I don't really have dealings with anyone because, my rent, everything is automatic. I don't have any complaints. I'm just an very easygoing tenant. So when he calls me 3 minutes later, he's really gruff. And again, I don't know this guy. So I'm like, why is he acting like this? So he's like, I'm here now. Where do you want to meet? Basement? I don't care. We could be the basement, lobby, whatever. It's up to you. I said, okay, the basement. That's where the locker is. So might as well meet there. So as I'm walking down to the basement, I'm just like, yo, this guy, why is he coming for me? Like, why is he testing me? This is not the time. I'm not the one right now. And so I'm waiting by the locker door, like the door to enter the locker. And he comes out of the elevator and he's already yelling. I don't know what's going on with this guy. It makes no sense to me. And because he's yelling and I'm upset about my stuff, I'm yelling back. And he's saying, oh, I called you this morning and you ignored my call. And I know you were still here. And I was like, yeah, I was in the shower when you called me this morning, getting ready for work. And he's like, well, I don't care. This is for you. This isn't my stuff. And I was just like, what is wrong with this guy? And so he's got the key, his pocket of keys to try to get into this locker room. And I'm trying to think of the things he was saying because it was just so ludicrous. And at one point he said, I don't know if this is just the way you are and the way you're talking to me is the way you talk to everybody. And I was like, actually, Carl, I don't talk to anyone this way, and anybody else I've dealt with, I've not had to act this way because nobody else has been acting the way you're acting. He's like, I'm only talking to you whether you're talking to me. I'm like, gaslighting's not going to work. This is my stuff. I don't know why. And then I said the thing I had at the thought of. I was like, I don't know why you're acting like the victim when I'm the one who was robbed of $4,500 of stuff. I don't know how this is on you to be upset. And he's like, you know what? If you don't calm down, I'm going to leave. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to calm down because I'm not feeling good. I just wanted this over. I'm like, I'm telling you what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk all the way to the end of this hall and we're both going to calm down. And then when I come back, we're going to be different people. And as I'm walking to the end of the hall, he does not shut up the whole time. And I don't even know what he's saying. I don't even remember what he's saying or what he said, but it's a long haul. So what I'm saying is I walked all the way to the end and I'm about halfway back and he's still going. I don't honestly don't remember what he said, but I just snapped and I was like, okay, you know what? I don't know what is wrong with you, but I walked all the way to the end of the hall and you couldn't shut up. You couldn't do it. What is wrong with you? Why won't you shut up? Like, I was so mad. And I'm trying not to scream into the mic and I hope nobody has earphones on. So he says something to the effect of, you want to raise your voice at me? I'll raise my voice at you. I'm like, raise your voice at me? I'm talking to you the way you're talking to me. He's like, oh yeah, raise your voice. I'll raise my voice to you. And I may scream. I'm not going to scream, but I may be really loud. So just earphones, take them off. So I said, trust me, Carl, if I raise my voice at you, you won't be able to raise your voice back. And then I screamed so loud because you won't even be able to hear yourself think. Keep in mind, this man is coming between me and my doll. So I'm not myself right now. And I'm so like angry. I don't know what is going on. I don't know who this man is. And it's like in my head, I've got this idea in Carol told me that, to go get these boxes. And I'm just doing what I was told. And now I'm being goaded into a fight by this person. I no idea why I'm upset at me. So anyway, because I screamed that at him, like he won't even be able to hear himself think, he goes, you know what? We're not even going in here. You're not allowed in this locker. And he, pulls out his key. And I was like, I don't need you to get in here. I got my own key. So I kind of like shoved past and put my key in the door. And I don't even know why I'm going in this locker room at this point. Like, I don't even want to be there. But I think that there was this animal side of me was like, you're going to tell me I can't go in here? Now I'm going in here. I don't need you. So I go into the room. I don't know what I'm going, honestly, don't know what I'm expecting to do when I go in this locker room. I think I'm just trying to get away from him. But he follows me inside and he's still yelling. And he's saying, you told the cops that you searched everywhere for these dolls, but I talked to him after and I told him, if you search, you didn't search very hard. I'm like, what is this guy talking about? So he's kind of just like going on these weird rants. And I said, you know what? It's okay. There's the camera's right outside the locker. They're going to see who did it. And he's like, you know what? I went through the footage and it was not there. And I was like, what wasn't there? He's like, the footage is not there, but IT's looking into it. And he looks so stressed that I'm like, why were you going through it? Bill was supposed to go through it. Why do you care? Like, don't want to be in this situation. And he's still yelling at me. And I was like, okay, you know what? I need to change the tone of this conversation. Like, that was like, now that I'm stuck in this locker room with him, like you saw that long, narrow hallway. So I'm like, okay, you know what, Carl? I'm going to keep forgetting his name, but you know what, Carl? You're right. I shouldn't have bothered you after hours. And this is for me. So I appreciate you coming all the way down here. So thank you. Like, literally just trying to like control the conversation a little bit because it's just like it would not stop. And so he kind of softened for a little bit and was like, oh, yeah, you're welcome. And then he just snapped and he's like, but you know what? The police were here this morning and I know that you were here. But I think what happened, he thought that when he was knocking on my door, he probably didn't know that I left for work. And as far as he knows, I was with the the police officer at 9:15. So as far as he's concerned, I never left and came back. So I think looking back on it, I didn't realize it in the moment, but I think he was like, oh, you were just ignoring me. You were just avoiding me when I'm trying to help you. I don't know. That's maybe what was going on. So he's talking about how when the police was here, he came down and saw him after and told the police officer that I didn't do a very good job of looking for my stuff. And I was like, where could I have looked? And so he walks to the very last locker. So the long end of that corridor, the picture that I showed you, you know what? Let me just show you again to have a picture in your head. I zoomed in on that last locker to show you something. Now, remember in the beginning of a long time ago, not the beginning, but way back in the story, I told you that when I went back down and I was more in my clear headspace, I started checking all the locks. And I remember checking every single lock. And I think if one of the locks didn't have a lock on it, I would have noticed, and I might have even peeked inside because of my mentality. I was even peeking in somebody else's locker. So Carl now has gone to the very last locker that now has no lock. And he said he came down there, and within a minute, without even thinking, he just noticed that there was this locker at the end of the hall, because Bill had mentioned that the only two tenants who have lockers are me and the person who else's locker had been opened. The rest are all like building lockers. So Carl, the guy I'm still with, who crazy, the not crazy, the agitated person who's yelling at me is saying that, these are all work lockers. So when he went to this locker that doesn't have a lock now, and maybe didn't before, but I swear it did because I swear I pulled on every single lock. He said he noticed that this locker didn't have a lock, so he opened it and saw some boxes inside. And he said he was kind of confused. Now his tone's a little bit lighter. He's a little bit softer. He's explaining what he found. So he's like, come look at these boxes. Again, the very end of the hallway. So I'm just walking down. I'm not getting excited because even if these are my boxes, I haven't even seen them yet. I'm not going to get excited because of that Tommy head that, fooled me, tricked me into thinking, that some of my dolls were going to be saved. So I get back there and I see that there are 2 of those 3-foot Chucky replica doll boxes, the shipper boxes. But I can't see if they're full, if they've been emptied out. And he's talking about how he's looking at them. There are shipping labels on them, which would say my name and my unit number. So he's saying I didn't know if like a tenant had moved out and left these here. So I was confused. So I was looking at them and I saw your unit. I'm like, yeah, it's got my name clearly marked on it. And I'm just trying not to get excited. So now I kind of move into the locker to feel if there's any weight, and I can feel that the dolls are still inside these boxes. So now 2 of the, I think it was, I don't even remember the number off the top of my head because I'm telling this crazy story, but now I think it's 2 of the 4, 2 of the 4 that had not come back when the 3 originally did, that weren't taken, if you know what I'm saying. So I feel the weight of the dolls and I just laugh with like relief and excitement and joy. And I'm just so happy because for one thing, I didn't even mention this, but one of the doll boxes, one of the big boxes, actually had 2 dolls in it. One of them was one of my favorite dolls. I'm making everything sound like I was so devastated about that. But this also had an artist-made doll that has never been mass-produced. And it's made of silicone. It looks lifelike. It is an amazing art piece. So, and I can never show that on YouTube because it's scary. It's scary and gross. But anyway, it's a baby. So anyway, not important. What was important was I was so excited that this particular box was still here. I just started laughing with like relief and joy. And Carl now is like, why are you laughing at me? And I just look over him like, what? He's like, I don't know what you think, but I had nothing to do with this. I don't know what you think, but that's not what happened. And I was like, everything just hit me in a very different, scary light. Whether what I was thinking was right or not, this is what I thought in the moment, and I'm going to tell the story from that perspective. It was like this cold went from the top of my head all the way down to my toes, because here's the thing. He was saying, as he's yelling at me, saying, I take my job very seriously, and I don't know what you're thinking about me, but, that's not what's going on here. You were the one who left your stuff in your locker. It's your fault that this happened. And so I'm, for the record, to give you like a perspective of where I am, I'm against that concrete wall in the corner. And he is the one who is on the outside with an easy way to exit. And so my brain is thinking, okay, he's acting really suspicious, my gut. And I'm one of those people who's very naive. I don't easily accuse somebody of anything. So it's like, if my gut is telling me that this is a dangerous, like really weird situation, then I have to listen just because, like I said, I'm naive and I don't easily think things like that. And so he's still yelling and my brain is just not shutting down. It's just going to a different place where I'm like, oh no, I have cornered myself in this concrete room with someone who who is acting so suspicious and has been this whole time. And I've been so emotional about these dolls and just this situation being so crazy that there may be a part of my brain that wasn't sending the right signals until now. And so I was no longer fighting with him. I was just letting him yell and just saying the same things over and over again. He takes his job seriously. I need to stop laughing. And I wasn't laughing more. The first thing I said was, I don't even think I explained that I was relieved. He thought I was laughing at him and I just let it happen. And so I was, thinking if he was desperate enough, let's say this was the case, if he was desperate enough to do this at his place of work, he would have had the means, he would have had the access to the footage that was not there. Because first of all, when did it even happen? Nobody knows when it happened. Like I said earlier, I hadn't been down there. I meant to go down there for the last month, but I hadn't been down there in probably 2. And I told the police, I told everybody that I'd spoken to that the timeline was really hard to gauge. So I don't know what timeline he was going by. There was just no footage from that camera, like ever? Or did he know exactly when to check? and then it wasn't there. And now IT was looking into it, and now he was really stressed. And if he was really stressed and he was really desperate that he did this, now I'm cornered with a person who may or may not be very desperate. And I don't get scared in those moments. First of all, I get annoyed because I was just so annoyed this whole time. But my brain kind of goes, okay, what do I do now? And so luckily, the thing that he was showing me in this back corner were these really, really big boxes that were they're almost the size of a human. They're probably a foot wide and a foot deep. So I just took one, put it between us as he's seriously yelling still. I don't even know what he's yelling about. I'm just like thinking, get out of this, get out of this now. And how do I do that? So as he's yelling, I'm just going, and not saying anything that's actually a word. And I'm slowly taking a step toward him with this box that's not just a shield, it's creating a distance so that maybe I sound paranoid. Maybe I had every right to be. That if he's going to do something desperate, if he's that desperate person I'm worried he might be in the moment, then at least I'm got this between us. So nothing short range. So I'm walking toward him and just, my not mean face, but like fierce face on or something like that. And just going, looking him up and down as he's taking backward steps toward the exit. And then I finally get to my locker and I stop with my box as if to say, I'm not going any further, but you are. So he is still walking backward and yelling. And the last thing I remember him saying was, from now on, you may not want to leave anything valuable in your locker. And I was like, you got that right. And then, the door closed and I'm still waiting there for the sound of the elevator to open and close so that I know he's gone and out of the way. And once he is completely gone, I grab these new boxes that I can bring up to my apartment and I dash. When I get upstairs, my head's kind of spinning and was I being paranoid? Was that as intense as it felt? Am I just emotional about my dolls? So I called my partner and it was a Friday. So he was in the office, which is very far from where I live. And I told him the whole story, but I left out that part at the end because this isn't the first time I put myself in danger in a storage locker over dolls. But this time it was I didn't feel like I did anything wrong. I didn't think I was stupid. Like maybe a person would have turned around when all that yelling was going on and been like, I don't need to deal with this. And I don't know what part of my brain was making me feel like I needed to fight this person. I don't know. Because one thing I forgot to mention is he was kind of familiar because there was someone who had come to do a repair in my apartment once, maybe a year or so ago. So like a vague memory. And if this was the same person, he wasn't yelling the whole time, so I couldn't recognize his voice. And he wasn't heavy, but this man was extremely skinny, was something I was noticing. I was like, it could be the same guy, but he looks really gaunt, like he lost weight fast. And so I think that was another thing that was going through my head now was like, what are the kinds, no, you know what? It wasn't going through my head yet. Scratch that. It'll come later. So I call my partner and I'm telling him everything except for that part where I put myself in danger without knowing it, without intending to, without seeing it coming. And so as we're talking, he and I both agree that I need to email Carol in the building management in the US and have every detail of what just happened. Make sure to incriminate him as much as possible. Talk about how, suspicious he was being, because this sounds like an inside job. It sounds like somebody trying to cover up and, just somebody's in a desperate situation. That's the only thing we could think about. So I luckily had to take a package to the post office to mail. So after I hung up with my partner, I was like, let me go clear my head a little bit, think about how I want to approach this, because you just don't know. Like sometimes you're in a moment and you want to react out of emotion and it's probably not the best way to go about it. So I decide to walk to the post office, which is just at the end of my street. It's not far. And oddly enough, as I'm walking down the end of my street, I pass Bill, who is the nicer guy who came down with the police. And he was one who was like, his legs were shaking. He was scared when the lockers got broken into. And I pass him and he's just like, Blaine, what happened? What's going on? Where are things at? Because one thing I forgot to mention with Bill was when he came down to the police with me, I mentioned the locker again, the one that had been broken into beside mine. And I said, has anybody contacted this person? Because there was like an apartment number on a piece of paper and a phone number or something. And Bill was like, oh no, let me contact them right now. So I'm like, it's Friday. So this is still Friday, but it was Friday this morning at the part of the story when the policeman was there. And he was like, oh, I'll contact them right after I leave this police. And in my head, I was just like, nobody's called this person yet. It's been like 3 days. Their locker is empty. And I don't know if it's supposed to be. But anyway, that's just a little. It's going to come up in a minute, so that's why I wanted to finally get that in there. So I'm going. My idea is to tell Bill a little bit because Carl is his coworker, so maybe he'll have some insight. He'll know why he reacted in such a way. He'll be like, "Oh, that was suspicious," and confirm my suspicions. But when I start to tell him what happened with me and Carl, he just says, "Oh yeah, whenever people come to us about problems with the building, they blame us for everything." So he was probably just acting like that because he thought you were going to blame him. And I was just, on one hand, like, okay, first of all, I wasn't blaming him for anything. Second of all, I was the one who was robbed. Third of all, you're totally on his side because he's your coworker, and I'm just another tenant who you just described as people who always, come to you very aggressively. And even though I'm not like that and haven't been like that with you, Bill, the whole time, you're still taking Carl's side. So, okay, mental note, you know, be careful about how you word things because if I talk to Carol, she doesn't have any, connection with me, but this is her employee ultimately. So I'm already got that in my head as I'm going to the post office. And then when I get back from the post office, shortly after I arrive home, there's a knock on my door. And my brain is just like, if that's Carl and he wants to go again, I'm ready. Like, not physically violent, but like, I'm ready to, like, have more of a verbal altercation with him. But I look through my peephole and I see these two little old white ladies, and I recognize one of them. So I open the door. She's my parking garage neighbor. Her car's parked next to mine. So I'm, assuming it's something to do with our cars. And so she's like, "Hi, garage neighbor. Turns out I'm also your locker neighbor." And so I was like, "Oh, it's you. You're the one whose locker got broken into." And then so she let me know that Bill had let her know in the morning. So after the police left, this is all the same day still, that her locker had been broken into. Go see if anything's wrong, fill out a police report. So probably about 10 in the morning. And this is now about 6:30ish, 7 at the latest p.m., which means that it happened, anyway, 9 hours ago that he had finally told her that her locker had been broken into. So my first thing was, did they steal anything? And she was like, not anything of value. I'm trying to think of what order to say this. So her items of value are like her toilet paper and her extra cleaning supplies, things that she uses pretty regularly, but she keeps extra in the storage locker because it doesn't all fit in her small apartment. And she said the only things they stole were a shopping buggy and a moving dolly. So I was just, my brain like was ready to explode. First time, it's not the first time or the last time that's going to happen in this conversation, but I was just like, oh, really? So they took the two things they would need in order to take my big boxes out of my locker and wherever they were going with it in the elevator. This is going to be so obvious if the IT recovers this footage. And so I was like, I mean, I'm glad that you don't feel that was of any value. Good. And I'm glad they didn't steal your toilet paper, I guess. And then it occurred to me, oh, and then we were talking, I was telling her about the scene I had with Carl. And her first input was, oh yeah, he's come to her apartment to fix things, and he can be very combative when she would try to tell him what to do because clearly he doesn't like a woman telling him what to do. I don't think there's anything to do with the story, but it's just saying she's seen his combative side. And even though she has seen it, when I told her how he had behaved with me, and I found it very suspicious, she was like, "Oh no, Carl wouldn't do anything like this." Meanwhile, her friend beside her, roommate, whoever she is, she didn't really speak much. She was just making these faces like, "Whoa, that's really, really sketchy, and I think you should probably let the authorities know this." But my parking neighbor, locker neighbor too, was also on his side, saying it didn't seem like anything he would do, even though she has seen, or whatever, it doesn't matter. Point about that part of the story is my brain went, okay, so I really do need to be careful how I address this when I contact Carol, because I don't want to sound like some paranoid person who is accusing everyone. Because, oh, another side story, just to let you know why, I would always question myself. When I was 17, I lived in a group home. It's a long story, a long, long time ago too. And at one point while I was living there, a lot of my stuff was going missing, like weird stuff, like not just my movie collection, my Disney movie collection, which I loved, but also my underwear went missing. And so I, I was accusing people. I was 17, by the way, so I was a kid, and I was accusing staff members because there was a particular staff member who was obsessed with my Disney collection. Said, "Oh, my kids love these movies, so you're so lucky that you have them because they're discontinued and you can't buy these movies anymore. This is a 90s thing. So when they went missing, my first thought was him. Like, he has access to my room. He would have a key. His kids want these movies. So to this day, I look back on that. I'm like, I falsely accused that man. And I really don't think a staff member would have done that. But anyway, that's not important. What is important is that this is the thing that made me not want to falsely accuse somebody as an adult. So I wanted to be very careful how I would approach the situation. So I was really glad that she came down and, made sure that I handled how I wanted to deal with this very carefully. So the next part of the conversation, the most important part of the conversation, was when I asked her, it like just dawned on me while we were talking. So if you keep stuff down there that you use a lot, toilet paper, cleaning supplies, you must go down there pretty often. And she said, oh yeah, I go down there all the time. And I said, when was the last time you were down there? So this is now Friday. This had happened a Tuesday, 4 days before. 3 days before? 4 days before. And she said the last time she had been down there was 4 days before that. So like the Friday before. And I don't know how my brain stayed inside my head because I was like, wait a minute. You were there Friday. Your locker wasn't broken. Your lock wasn't broken. Your dolly, the stuff wasn't taken. That means whatever had happened, what I had gone down there the Tuesday night, had probably happened the day before. Because chances are it wasn't happening on the weekend. And it was the Tuesday night, like I said, when I went down, which means if I hadn't had that box sitting in my kitchen for almost a month, even though that does not like me, I always want to get stuff out of my kitchen and into my storage locker. If I had brought it down right away, I would not have gone down into my locker for at least another month, until I was going to bring back my AC back down. And now I'm absolutely convinced that whoever was doing that job had started probably the Monday, maybe sometime on the weekend. They had taken out whatever they could in a rush because everything was like in shambles, ransacked. And they could only get out so much, even with the dolly and the shopping cart. So I guess they did move the other pieces that were still in that were magically reappeared in that locker over after that. So I was just floored because it was just, it could have been, when I say it could have been so much worse, everything could have been taken because I could have gone down there later. And this clearly was a job that was not done. And it was just such a fluke. Like, I can't even express to you how much of a fluke. I think I just did, though. It was such a fluke, right? So yeah, if like, knowing when she had last gone down there, knowing how I caught everything, I just felt like good in the sense that I know that it all would have been gone if I had gone down a couple weeks later. And, whoever had taken those boxes and moved the other ones over, they were probably, phase 2 was going to be getting those out of there and then finishing off whatever was in my locker. And I can't help but think that whoever had put it into that last locker had locked it, because I know I pulled those locks, even though I don't have a photographic memory. Who knows? I should leave some room for benefit of the doubt. But regardless, this is kind of where things come to an end, but it's not over yet. So let me regroup. The thing about my mind being so blown that Friday night was I had another video to film. So again, to anyone following the timeline or just curious about what state I was in, when I filmed, I recorded my Ariel unboxing and restyling video. I know for a fact, I didn't need to rewatch the video to know that my mind kept zoning out over so many things while I was recording it. So I would literally stop, go silent while I was filming, recording, and then I just like, oh, sorry, I got distracted by how cute she looks. Like anything, just I was not ready to talk about this. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about it then, but my mind would jump from while I was filming, think about how, I was backed into that corner, and then it was, wow, what if I hadn't taken my box down when I did? It could have been so much worse. And it was just all these things kept going through my head while I was filming that video. So, yeah, I've been through it this last month. Filming, not filming, all the time. I've just been a different person. But anyway, so I took the weekend to think about how I wanted to approach or handle the emails that I was going to send both the police officer and Carol at the building. So I sent a really diplomatic message to both of them, just saying, because what happened was Carol emailed me Monday to say that they're going to give me a new locker in a different locker room. So I would need to speak to Carl about getting the key for the new locker room. And I was like, okay, I need to deal with this now because I don't want to deal with him ever again, like ever again. So that's when I took the real, as diplomatic as possible approach by saying, um, I don't know Carl, so I don't know what he's going through or anything about him personally, but I think he might be going through something. I said something to this effect. I'm not like verbatim, obviously, here, but whatever happened when I went down to that locker with him for him to show me those boxes, he just wanted to fight me. And I spent the next 10 minutes with him wanting the moment to be over. I wanted my boxes and I wanted to get out of there, but he just kept fighting with me. So, with all due respect, I do not want Carl to give me the key for the new locker room. I don't want to deal with Carl ever again. So, I'm laughing about it now, but at the time I was just trying to be careful with my words. And I didn't want to say any suspicions I had because I definitely had them and have them for the record, but I didn't want to say anything that's just going to make me look like the bad guy who's running around accusing everybody because I'm upset about my stuff. And so she responds pretty immediately to say, "Oh, I understand. I'm really sorry to hear that that's not okay. And Bill will give you the key instead." And so that's and then I emailed something a little bit similar to the police officer. And so this is the Monday, just to remind you. So it's less than a week after it happened. The next day it'll be a week. And so it ends with her saying, meet up with Bill. He'll give me the key. And I do end up meeting with Bill and getting the key from him. And he shows me the new locker. And I don't talk about the Carl thing at all. I'm just like, whatever's going to happen there is going to happen there. I have no control over anything. And maybe he's upset about other stuff because when I had spoken to my parking lot neighbor, she had mentioned the weight loss too. And so this one little sneaking thing I had in my head, which is really a judgmental thing, and I don't know him, so this is pure judgment. And in my situation, I couldn't help but feel judgment. My brain just kept going, well, what are two of many things that can cause really quick, like weight loss? And this is again judgmental, accusational, but it's just my feelings. That's all I'm telling you. And I was like, somebody is, maybe not eating as much if they're struggling financially. And again, I don't know him, so I'm just saying this is anybody. This is something I could put on anybody, not just him. It could be like a financial struggle with groceries for anybody out there, or some kind of substance abuse. These are just things that were going through my head, like something I'm just looking and clutching at straws, anything to make sense. Because when something like this happens to you, you're trying to make sense of why it happened. It doesn't feel nice, so you're gonna have unnice thoughts. So I'm so slowly moving things because I feel like my dolls are gonna come back to me. Like I said, my Gonzo doll that I would search that arena for every day, every time I went back until I was like 11. If I didn't stop searching for the Gonzo doll, you think I'm just gonna let go of these Chucky dolls that I, as an adult, spent so much money on? But that's not important. So what I'm saying is, it was not even the Chucky dolls. It was just I slowly moving the things out. They were like, oh, you can have both keys right now because two different locker rooms. And I just said, yeah, I'll give you back the key when I'm done. But I was so slowly moving because every time I would pick up a box, I would think of a box that like went missing. And I was like, oh, there's more stuff. And I didn't want to, it's like, I don't want to know everything that was missing. It's like, I want enough time to pass that I'll just forget I had those things and never think about it again because it's out of my control, right? So I took a couple of days to move my stuff out of the locker, and it wasn't until I think the Monday after that the next piece happened. I did have to double check my notes because I had to make notes to everything for insurance and all that stuff. But it was actually Friday it wasn't the next week, it was the Friday of that week. So after the couple of days of moving my stuff, that I finally filled out my insurance claim because part of not letting go was me worrying about filling out this claim because, two of the boxes had already come back of the original claim. And so I was trying not to fill out an insurance claim prematurely, have everything come back because I'm still wishful that they'll come back. And then, I'm basically pulling insurance fraud. So it was Friday. There was nothing had happened over this whole week now. So I finally call the insurance broker who's been calling me and saying like, we need to go through this, or emailing me to say we need to get this all laid out. So I call him Friday evening and I tell him the whole story. And if you want to know, he was literally typing out what I was saying. So at first I thought he was just curious what happened. So I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, whoa, 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 slow down. I need to type all this. So then I like, anyway, I just, a silly little thing that I didn't know. He was like, just can't dictate what I'm saying, and then have somebody else type it out. But so one of my questions to him was, what if we fill out this claim and then I get the stuff back? Can I just tell you and then send back the claim money, because I don't want to pull insurance fraud? I used to work for insurance quite a while ago, so I've studied insurance a bit and I understand how fraud works, and I don't want to have that on my record. And I'm still clutching at straws, like can't let go of the fact that these dolls might find their way back to me. So we do the entire claim process, and then well, not the entire process. I tell him everything that happened. He sends me the forms that I'm to fill out as soon as I can. I have until, like, I don't know, I think the law in my province or in Canada is I have until like 2 years or something to fill out these claim forms. It was something ridiculous where I was like, okay, good, because I don't want to fill them out yet. I don't want to do this until I know for sure they're not coming back. So stupid. Um, so the Monday, the following week, the only thing that happens, I think, is the police officer finally responds to my message from the Monday before to say, thanks for the update. That's literally all he said. So I'm just like, wow, I mean, I already know that this doesn't matter. This is such a low priority profile case. And it's all with insurance now, right? So, I'm still, my only worry is, I can't believe I forgot this. It's such an important part from the insurance is, when we were talking, he was going through my coverage, because I have like $50,000 coverage, which is, the insurance I'm paying for. And I'm telling him what I'm covered for, or what I'm claiming. And he says, oh, that's good. Because at this point, by the way, so the $4,500 that was originally stolen, like $2,300 of that came back with the 2 boxes. So now my claim is going to be for $2,100. It's not a clickbait title because it really was stolen. It just, some of it came back. So he's explaining to me that, okay, that's within my $5,000 collectible coverage. And I was like, $5,000 what? Collectible coverage? I'm like, no. All I'm covered for is collectibles. He's like, no, in your policy, you only have up to $5,000 for things like, and he went through like collectible cards. He just said all these collectible things. And I was like, I'm pretty sure, like by pretty sure, I mean 100% sure that when I signed up for my insurance, I said I'm a collector. I have a lot of dolls that are worth a lot of money, so I need to have this amount of coverage. So I don't know what this other $4,500 or $45,000 would be covering. And I don't need this insurance if it's only covering my furniture. I don't have that much furniture. So anyway, this is what I was saying earlier, the very beginning of this message about, like, make sure your insurance coverage is covering what you need it to. And he explained to me that there's a $1,000 deductible. And to anyone who doesn't know what that means, if you've never had to deal with insurance, and like I said, I worked on insurance. So in this $2,100 claim that I was making, I'm not going to get 1,000 of that back because that's the deductible. It's deducted off of your entire claim. So the most I will get back on this is going to be 1,100 because my claim is now 2,100. Does that make sense? I hope I made that clear. So he was explaining to me what a deductible was, and I was like, yes, I know. But it's fine, considering, again, how much worse it could have been if I hadn't caught it when I did. I wasn't mad about this $1,000 deductible. I was just sad that I may not get my stuff back. And it's like, I wouldn't even if I do get reimbursed, it's not like I would go out and rebuy this stuff. It's like, it's painful. And, I'm saying this now, even a month later, and it's still too painful that I don't think I would. And I'm not getting ahead of myself. I'm just saying, like, even as I'm filming this, it's not something I can see myself going and repurchasing, just because it's like, it's painful. So yeah, then nothing happened. The Monday was just the officer responding, and let me regroup again because I have another emotional day after this one. Okay, so the next day is Tuesday, October 1st, which means it's been like 2 weeks since this all began. And as I mentioned earlier, I had spent a day at work one day, looking through Marketplace to see if any of my Chucky stuff had, if anybody had been selling it. And it wasn't just something I thought to do myself. Other people, when I would tell people, like coworkers, etc., what was happening, they all said, oh, you need to start checking. Kijiji is Canada's version of Craigslist. So they were like, you need to start checking Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace. So because I had searched that when this had all begun, that was kind of something that might show up in my feed. And sometimes when I'm at work, if I need a little downtime just for fun, I'll go through Marketplace and just for my own, like for fun, see if there are any like American Girl things I want or Tiana stuff. You never know. It's just for fun. I don't always have to buy something, but because I had Chucky in my feed now, I went into Marketplace and do you want to know what was staring me in my face? My Tommy head. So it's not, it wasn't like a paranoid moment. So the thing about these Tommy heads is they have movable eyes. So there's like you open its head and there's this like lever and you can make his eyes go into a position you want. And I remember my particular Tommy head had this expression, looking like really high up, almost like he was possessed. And these dolls don't all ship with that same expression. So I immediately knew that was my Tommy head. And the one I talked about, the one that goes on to the Ultimate Chucky. And so I clicked on the seller's profile, not even looking at the seller yet, but just seeing if there were other items, like, because I can't explain to you the feeling I had. My heart was racing so hard, and this is going to be like maybe a little bit of a TMI moment, but it's okay. It's an old story. I have never felt this level of shock and like heart racing since the time I discovered my ex was having an affair. So that level of shock, that level of just feeling so violated was the second time I felt this in my life. Yes, I would compare it to feeling cheated on. So it was terrible. And so I was just like with shaky hands looking through the rest of his stuff, and there was no mistaking this was my stuff. Because there are Chucky items I have that are so old and so obscure, and like nobody would even care about certain things that are in there. And the seller was selling them along with a couple more obvious things and some things I'd forgotten that I had. So I was like, oh, it was just, I felt disgusted. I felt gross. Like I felt so, I don't know. Like I just, yeah, cheated. I felt betrayed. So, and I know it sounds, and it does sound dramatic, but it is the truth. But so now I'm starting to think about this person and how did they get my stuff? And the profile picture, just to put you in my head of what I was going through in that particular moment, the profile picture had two people in it, and the person in the background definitely didn't know them, but the person in the front, I'm going to tell you what I know now. It's an actor I know who this actor is, and he has in the past few years gone through a major weight loss. So he has that same fast weight loss gaunt face. And I'm not even kidding. It's so weird that it would be that actor who looks, just because of that gauntness, resembles or made my brain think of Carl. I was like, Carl really put this on his own Marketplace? But that's not what had happened. So I just, before I get too far into the story, I want to say I don't think this is who stole from me. I absolutely 100% don't think it's the person, because I reacted a little bit without calming down first and thinking about it, because my first thing was, oh, I know who stole my stuff. It's this person. And I took screen captures of his profile, thinking that gaunt actor was him, and the items in his selling list that were mine. And I circled them and I sent them to Carol to ask her if is this our tenant? Do you recognize this person? And she said no. And by the time she got back to me, I had already calmed down. I had looked through his profile more, and he obviously was not that actor. He was the guy in the background. And I also saw that he had recently attended a booth at like a fan expo, a horror expo, and he sells a lot of stuff secondhand, has a store, things like that. So I came to the conclusion that he would have been an easy person for whoever stole my stuff, because it was stolen, obviously. He was an easy person to sell to as like a middleman, and he wouldn't even know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I can't feel any hate toward him. I could feel the revulsion when I look at those posts that still show up in my feed, by the way. But I can't blame the guy. He probably got them for a really good price, because he was selling them for a pretty decent price, pretty close to retail, to be honest. And so, it just boils my blood to think of how cheap this person would have sold them to him, because he was selling them for a not too inflated price. I'm so mad. And that Tommy head, that's gonna haunt me. Not that I need it back, and I'm probably not ever going to even. This is something that was only sold for a limited time, because this was the end of the license that they had for the Chucky merchandise. So they didn't make a lot, and Anyway, I didn't even use it. It was still in its original box, and that's how he was selling it, like in the display box. Anyway, so after I had time to calm down, I sent it off to the police officer as well, saying like, this is the person who has my stuff. I even called my partner and I was like, can you say you're interested in this and find out where he is and who he got it from? And but I mean, we're not investigators. It's not something that I need to divulge in. It's not his fault. I 100%, I like in the bottom of my heart, I believe he doesn't know that it's stolen merchandise. He's just anyway. Um, so that was just, I reached a new low when that happened. It was just I conceded defeat, and I filled out my insurance form, and I realized this stuff, the rest of the stuff is not coming back. And I the few weeks later, Blaine is able to say, be grateful for what you got back, be grateful that you caught it when you did, because yeah, this was not done. And so I just think, for the record, it's been since that, what was it, October 1st, that I emailed the police officer, and it's almost 3 weeks later, and no response yet. So there's not going to be a response. And so these are some of the takeaways that I was talking about, where I had to learn going through this, that uh, this is not a priority case for any police officer, and I can only hope that they're not hope, that sounds bad, but I can understand that there would be more pressing concerns than my doll collection. So that's why insurance was important. It's important to me as someone who is my dolls mean a lot to me. So having the insurance really did put a little bit of a protective barrier around me and help me get through the situation that was already stressful. And when I say stressful, I mean, I can't, when I was at work on my Teams calls, like my video calls with people who aren't in the office every day, I could not help but catch a glimpse of how busted and stressed I looked. Like every day I was like, I have aged 10 years from this experience. I'm fine now. I feel better. And, I really do feel like getting this off my chest is going to help with the grieving process, with the moving on. And I hope my videos will be seen like, I don't feel like my videos have been normal for this last month. And it's all me. It's all me. It's all in my head. And I'm pretty sure nobody else would think anything. Maybe if you look back on it, you'll be like, oh, he was weird. It's always been weird. But anyway, so that's, yeah, so that's a part of the takeaway, is just make sure your insurance is covering what you need it to cover. And, so I need to reassess my entire premium, my entire policy to, why do I have $50,000 coverage and only 10% goes towards my collectibles, the very thing I'm trying to insure. So that's another thing. And I've also, it has had an impact on me emotionally. And just to give some examples, for one thing, I'm now going into the office only part-time. I moved all of my Chucky dolls up into my apartment. So I have all these huge boxes in places that are not convenient. It's like not conducive to like the feng shui of my displays. Not that that's very feng shui, but you know what I mean. So it's made me realize, not just because of the insurance, but I also have a lot of dolls that are, closeted, in the sense that I've been slowly, lazily selling them off. So I need to get a little bit more active in that. I need to take it more seriously, because I have so much more than my coverage allows. So I need to get back to that. So I'm trying to look at the positives here. That's a positive. Like if I can get my collection cleaned up, not my collection, but my closets cleaned up. I really need to, aside from all this. But now I need the closet space for my Chucky dolls, because obviously I'm not going to put anything of value down in my storage locker. And the ultimate plan is to get everything out of the storage locker when I have the emotional capacity to go through and maybe save some of the ornaments. Maybe they weren't all broken, and really just get anything out of there that's pretty much garbage. Because that was the painful thing when I was going through this. Everybody kept telling me, not everybody, sorry, people on the building side of things kept telling me not to put anything valuable in there, like as if it was my fault that a locker, first syllable being lock, was not a secure place to put your stuff. Like people put way more valuable things in actual lockers, not in your building. And I'm not saying lockers don't get broken into, but it was just the idea of people telling me that it was basically my fault for having valuable stuff in my locker was a problem for me. So it's like, what do you think I'm putting in there? Garbage? Should you be storing? Is it a garbage locker or is it a storage locker? So my intention now is just to get the stuff out of there, because I'm going to save the money that I'm spending extra in rent on my storage locker too. And it feels like paranoia right now, but I think a lot of adults live like this, and it's just a responsible thing. I now have like a Ring camera on my door, and I have extra like security chain. And because I never had this, as an adult, I've never lived like that. As a kid, we had that. We lived in a pretty questionable neighborhood, so now I guess we're in a time where everybody's struggling, and I think the last piece of, I may not be done talking, but the last piece of what happened with the story, because I have, when I put in my insurance claim, I got an auto reply saying that things are slow. So I haven't gotten my claim back. I'm absolutely fine. The being without that, I was never trying to make money off those dolls anyway. I was never going to sell them. So not having the money doesn't bother me. Like the dolls being gone, I'm coping. I'm slowly dealing with it. I'm going to let go of it one day, but I'm not there yet. And so that part's fine. And so I don't know when that's gonna come to a conclusion. And when I reached out, the last I reached out to the building, Carol, I asked if there was any progress with the footage that the IT was looking into, and the only response, the only solution, or the final response on it is they weren't able to recover the footage, but they fixed the problem going forward, which is to say, now it's recording, I guess. But the truth is, our security station is right in front of the building. When you enter, you see through the glass door all the monitors are on, and I've never noticed any of the monitors not on. So I can't help but believe, whether I'm right or wrong, I can't help but allegedly believe, or I can't help but believe that allegedly someone would have deleted the footage just because, you know, come on, come on. um, so I just I have had to make certain lifestyle changes, and the impact, like to talk a little more about the emotional impact it had on me. A really good example is one day, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was coming back from the store. It was a little bit late at night, and when I reached my building, I looked up and my balcony door was open, and I broke out into a run because nobody was home. And I was like, somebody's in my apartment. Who's in my apartment? Who's stealing my stuff? They know that I brought my Chucky dolls up, or they're getting everything. And I don't know how many steps I took running that I was like, Blaine, that's the balcony above you. I'm just like so paranoid that like somebody's out to get me, or it's happened, and it's like I lost that like level of innocence. So that's part of the coping that I'm going through too. Is just like, I don't want to leave my apartment. Not only do I not want to leave the apartment for my work all day, because as I said, I'm not even, when I say part time, I'm not even, it's not like one day on, one day off. It's like I'm only going in for a couple hours a day, the days that I do go in, because it's like I'm just feeling so bound to my stuff. Like I'm being so possessed by my possessions right now. It'll pass, and I will be my normal self again eventually. But another thing that was kind of sad was I realized I had a Disney World trip planned for, at the time I'm recording this, I would have already have left, and I wanted to go for the Tiana ride because I'm a Tiana collector, and I wanted to experience the ride because it's a huge deal for Tiana fans and Princess and the Frog fans, and I wanted to collect the rest of the merchandise. But I know that I would just be in terror the whole time thinking about my apartment, and just I wouldn't be enjoying myself. It's not the right time, and that's another element of how I have to get past this feeling, and that's where I think like talking about it is going to help, because there'll still, even at this time, I'll be like trying to fall asleep, and I'll be like, somebody coming into my apartment tonight, I can't go to work tomorrow. Like it's just like it's still in me. So and it's fresh, like I said, it's only been a month. So anyway, it means a lot to anybody who listened to this, because I know it was a long story, and I think that probably covers everything. It covers enough, and this channel has been helpful in so many ways. This was obviously something I never planned. A video, I wouldn't want anyone to have to film a video like this, or to go through what I went through, and I know people have. And so this is in place, this video is in place of some Chucky unboxings, because I had actually bought, Home Depot did this animatronic Chucky for their Halloween release this year, and I had bought it because it was such an amazing price. It was $200 US, and it was only $30 more in Canada, which is beyond. I think the real price would have been about $270. So it was like, it was a deal. It was like $40 cheaper than if I'd bought it in America. And they sold out really fast in America, and people were having a hard time getting it there. And so when that happened, I returned it. It was, yeah. So downsizing, I need to downsize things, and Not not like the things I'm currently collecting, but I just have to clean up things a little bit, I guess. Fine. So anyway, back to what I was saying about thanking everybody for listening. And this is, I may engage a lot in the comments because I'm sure people will probably have advice or something or whatever, and that'll be helpful. But then will probably, I think I'm feeling good about this, that this is going to help me move on, and going forward, my other videos will be a lot more normal and I will be behaving like my regular self. So anyway, thanks again, and I'll see you soon in the next one.